And I passed in my CV over the bar, and about a few months later, I ended up doing sales training at Pitney
right.
Bowes. So started on the kind of sales and service side, and then they didn't have any systems, so then I started implementing Salesforce.
What was the biggest learning from doing an MBA?
I ended up doing mine at Sydney University, and it was a more experiential MBA, so it was very focused on concepts like design thinking and human-centered design, right, which fit very well in certainly what we do day to day.
Like consulting. As someone that have like an entrepreneurial mindset, how do you feel in organization as an individual contributor?
It can be very difficult, partly because people don't know how to manage you, right? So when people with a very entrepreneurial mindset go into a corporate environment, by their very nature, they're problem solvers. So you don't stick in your lane ultimately, and in a lot of environments, they just like keep to what you're doing, don't deviate from it, right? So often that would then kind of work for you and against you. So you find opportunities in the extra 20% that you're not being paid for, if you know what I mean. And that's something that I always talk about a lot. But in those environments, sometimes people feel a little bit threatened because you're kind of stepping beyond your remit. When that's not necessarily your intention. You just want to make things work better. It's like there's a problem, let's cut to the bottom of it and solve it.
From like 0 to 0.5, like the very first step of becoming a Salesforce partner, what it is and how does that feel?
I already had very in-depth knowledge of Salesforce and the partner program and the network. So when I kind of made that call, it was actually quite easy for me to kind of get started, right? I was like, I already have a customer. I already have certifications. I've already started bringing people onto the books. So, we didn't start from nothing.
How did you surround yourself first when you started?
I guess interestingly, a lot of the way that the people I brought on in the beginning, I actually brought on people that I could train. One of our team members, when he had just finished uni, he was actually not doing what he was passionate about. So at the time, he was kind of working in warehouses for the likes of Cotton On, and through mutual connections, got introduced to me. So essentially, I offered him an unpaid internship for a month or so. To just give him an opportunity to see what we do and how we do it. And fast forward 3 or 4 years, and he's on an architect track.
How do you describe like Salesforce to your friends? Do you describe it like as a CRM first or as an overall platform?
I talk about it as our canvas. So to a certain degree, it's a blank page, right? And the number of problems that we can solve on it, yes, they revolve around CRM concepts like stakeholder management. But the types of problems we've solved, if you look at something like child story out of fax, like we're actually managing super sensitive processes about super sensitive people in the most fragile time of their lives, right? Where, in other government systems, tracking lobbyists and all that kind of stuff, which is not a typical CRM function. And then all the way to, sales and service and portals and integration and automation, all this kind of stuff. So for me, it's more about seamlessly managing business processes end to end.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm with Michael Diamond, the founder of Arcturious, a Salesforce practice that is well known in the Salesforce ecosystem. I had the chance to meet you like 3-4 years ago when I was kickstarting my Salesforce career, and just like thank you because you were here for the conversation and
no problem
and for the kickstart. For those that doesn't know you already, could you introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, Michael Diamond. So I'm the CEO and founder of Arcturious. Started Arcturious about 5 years or so ago, but I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem 16, 17 years, since 2008, I think was my first Salesforce implementation. started on the customer side, ended up on the consulting side. So it's been a good journey.
Yeah. And what I would be interested is to understand like how you started and like so you are from South Africa
originally. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I saw that in your study. So so you arrived in Australia like 20 years ago or so?
No? Actually started in the UK. So I went moved over to the UK when I was about 16.
Yeah.
Finished off my last couple of years of school over there.
Okay.
I actually went straight into hospitality. So I was actually running bars and restaurants and pubs and hotels and all that kind of stuff. Always had an affinity for the tech side. So I was a guy always building the table plans and stuff inside the back-end systems and setting up our SKUs and all that kind of jazz. And then, on one fateful Christmas Eve, I had the right person come into the bar that I was working in, had a chat with him, and he owned a company that specialized in essentially a data warehouse for hotels and booking agents for like business travel. And I passed him my CV over the bar, and about a few months later, I ended up doing sales training at Pitney Bowes, selling franking machines. And then out of the blue, this guy gave me a call, had a chat with him, and he offered me a job, kind of my first kind of, I guess, not hospitality, sales and customer service role outside of Pitney Bowes.
Like a bit more like corporate job.
Yeah, exactly. So started on the kind of sales and service side, and then they didn't have any systems. So then I started implementing Salesforce.
Directly,
for ourselves. And then from there, every role I took after that had like an element of Salesforce in it. So I was kind of building either CRMs that were custom as like a secondary part of my role. And then ended up moving to Australia, doing it again in the company I moved to over here. So at the time I was in the IoT space.
That must be interesting as well. IoT.
Yeah, really interesting space as well.
I feel there is like maybe 5-10 years ago, it was also even more trendy than what it is now. I feel I remember when I was like a student, like people were talking a lot about IoT.
Absolutely.
We had like a very popular company in France that developed like the chipset. Sigfox.
Yeah.
And it was specifically in the city where I studied, like Toulouse.
Yeah.
And they become like massive, like in IoT.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an interesting set of technology because Sigfox is ultimately ultra low bandwidth. So you could send very small packets of data really cheaply.
I understand.
So managing things like water, plants and stuff. So like turning dams on and off and all that kind of stuff was really interesting space. But we got involved in all that kind of stuff.
That must be interesting. And so after that you arrived in Australia, you started to work directly for a Salesforce partner, or it was client side still?
So that first job was selling boxes, so like the modems that go into IoT devices. And it I guess this was really the beginning of my dedicated Salesforce career, because at that point they had built a CRM inside of their accounting system. I think it was called the Tache. And they basically invested 6 months in it, and it was
like
rubbish.
Great.
It was not good at all. So I tried to pitch it to the board that we should get Salesforce, and they were like, "No, we've already spent all this money." So I went rogue. Set up a Salesforce trial, and essentially within 2 weeks, I'd built a better CRM than they had done in 6 months. So the board basically gave me funding to go and do it.
So that must be very hard to convince people that already invested, like, because 6 months we are speaking probably $100,000. That must be like a hard challenge to.
It was a little bit of a challenge to kind of convince them, but once they'd seen the system in action and the reporting I was able to do, and I was even showing customers on maps and all kinds of stuff. And used Informatica Cloud at the time to integrate the invoicing system back in and all that kind of stuff. So once they'd seen that and they'd seen how quickly we got there,
they understood.
They understood it. They saw the value.
I understand. And what Informatica system does? I'm not sure.
So it's at the top end, it's basically an ETL and integration platform.
Yeah, okay.
So similar to, I guess, MuleSoft now in the Salesforce ecosystem.
Yeah, okay.
So it was after that I kind of thought to myself how I enjoy the Salesforce stuff better than I enjoyed the sales roles I was doing at the time. So then I put my CV in market, spoke to Salesforce, got a few offers on the table from Salesforce partners, and then I joined SMS management and technology at the time.
I saw that one. So this one is like an ISV partner? Like
no. So you're thinking of the other SMS. No, the SMS management and technology was a Australian-based consulting firm. In fact, APAC. We had a bit of work in Hong Kong and other places as well. And then after being there for a little while, I ended up taking the Salesforce practice as a capability lead. And then, worked to grow that out for a few years. So I was there for about 5 years-ish. They have been acquired since. So I think now they got acquired by ASG and now they're NRI.
But it was a consulting practice.
Pure consulting, yeah. Yeah. So they did all kinds of consulting. The obviously the tech stacks like Salesforce and Microsoft. But also, just project and program management as well.
And then you created your own practice.
No,
you went to PwC.
Went to PwC first, So I was at PwC for a couple of years. I started PwC and my MBA pretty much within a week of each other. And I finished them within a week of each other. So it was kind of in 2020 amongst the COVID pandemic. Around August that year, I decided to start Arcturus. I was supposed to be traveling, but obviously COVID shut that down. And then through my MBA network, somebody kind of reached out and said, "Hey, we need some help with some Salesforce stuff."
Like implementation project.
Kind of like they'd been using the platform for a while. And then it was like, well, you don't need a Salesforce consultant, you need a tech strategist. And I said I could help you with that. So we started building out their tech strategy from an advisory perspective, then moved into a remediation project, and then that turned into, a service cloud project, and a field service project, and marketing cloud, the MuleSoft.
Like expanding,
So that client, we ended up winning a Global Partner Innovation Award with. Just because we're bringing the whole platform to bear. So I think we ended up with 14 or 15 Salesforce products and ISVs in that client.
Is there that many?
There are. There are.
And like regarding the MBA, like could you explain like what are the benefits? Do you think it's very worth it as a founder? Like what was the biggest learning from doing an MBA?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it depends where you do your MBA. So, some universities specialize in a more academic MBA. I ended up doing mine at Sydney University, and it was a more experiential MBA. So it was very focused on concepts like design thinking and human-centered design, right? Which fit very well in certainly what we do day to day.
Like consulting.
Yeah, exactly.
But do you learn to run a business because I'm not? I understand what the MBA is, but like exactly what do you learn from the MBA?
Yeah, so everything from right at the beginning, it's all about people and interactions. So how do you manage yourself and understand yourself and the people around you? As you go through, understanding elements of marketing, elements of finance. Back end of my MBA, I did a lot of venturing type stuff. So innovations in corporate venturing, we had to go from essentially coming up with an idea or concept and then trying to actually make some money on it within 6 weeks. So really condensed kind of venturing projects. I also went to India and did a social impact project over there. But they were very much similar theme, right? Go in, identify a problem, interview people, customer-centric research, and then going and kind of coming up with solutions for those particular problems. The back end of the MBA in particular is very much focused on that. So I do a fair amount of mentoring back in around the capstone project, which is where you're supposed to bring all that stuff together. So you have a corporate client that comes in and says, "Here's my problem statement. Go and help me find the
that
solution."
must be interesting.
So they're kind of very rapid, kind of boiler room kind of examples where you're really put under this artificial pressure to try and come up with an idea or a venture that'll go and kind of add some value in the market.
Okay, I understand. It's a bit like you touch all the point of a business to
Absolutely.
Maybe not be expert in all the aspects, but get a broad understanding of like each vision of the department.
Yeah, which when you move into, C-level roles and leadership roles inside of businesses, you don't need to be an expert in everything, but you need to at least know enough to be able to make decisions, right? So if a CFO or financier is coming to you with a financial report, you need to kind of understand what the numbers mean.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you are sitting in front of marketing people, you kind of need to understand what they're kind of talking about, so you can, have a meaningful conversation and actually make decisions off the back of that.
And do you feel like the Michael from the Salesforce practice, SMS, what's the full name?
Management and technology.
SMS management technology, and the Michael from that kickstarts his own business, like Arcturious, is very different, like in terms of mindset and like mental after this MBA experience?
Yes and no. I mean, there was always had that kind of an entrepreneurial drive. I just didn't know where to put it.
Okay.
So the probably the biggest thing that, going through SMS, PwC, and then the MBA as well, kind of gave me a little bit more confidence to go, okay, actually you see how other businesses are run, and some are run really well and some are run not so well, but are still doing well. So it's like, okay, well, maybe the risk isn't as big as it seems on paper. Right?
Okay, I understand.
So I often hear about, sometimes the more educated you are in things, the harder it is to get started. Because you understand the risks, right? So, sometimes kind of ignore all the noise, and ignorance is bliss, right? So you just run into it and hope for the best. And sometimes that ends up in some of the best results. So for me, I kind of got to that point where I couldn't find a place that I thought was really going to help me grow any further. And that I really gelled with the strategy of those businesses. So, for me, it was like, okay, do I go back into what I was doing before in an environment that I don't always thrive in? Or do I go and try something new and put my passions to use in our client base? So that worked really well.
That's very interesting, because like the question that I was about to ask is like, as someone that have like an entrepreneurial mindset, how do you feel in organization as an individual contributor? And this is a very interesting question, I think, because I guess it can be hard. Like, there is pros and cons, and I think I will be like to hear from you, like, how did you felt like this year where you were working in an organization?
I think it can be very difficult, partly because people don't know how to manage you, right? So when people with a very entrepreneurial mindset go into a corporate environment, by their very nature, they're problem solvers. So you don't stick in your lane, ultimately. And in a lot of environments, they just like keep to what you're doing, don't deviate from it, right? So often that would then kind of work for you and against you. So you find opportunities in the extra 20% that you're not being paid for, if you know what I mean. And that's something that I always talk about a lot. But in those environments, sometimes people feel a little bit threatened because you're kind of stepping beyond your remit. When, that's not necessarily your intention. You just want to make things work better. It's like, there's a problem, let's cut to the bottom of it and solve it, right? So that's something that I think makes it quite difficult to work in some of those environments. Unless they're set up to allow for that investigation and problem solving. So you'll see a lot of organizations. I think Spotify's a good example of one where they make like 20% time, and that's where you can just go kick off a project or at least suggest a project and try and form a team around it, right? So you go, my job's sales, but I see a problem over there in project management, or, I see a problem over there in operations, and I want to go solve that problem, even though it's not my core job. And And that's where I think you'll see entrepreneurial people thrive the most.
Yeah, I think that's a very like good initiative from them, and I think as you mentioned, it can be very hard, I guess, to act as one function in the system. If we take like the organization as a system, and like the individual as a function, it's quite restricted in a way, and yeah, I think I agree with you. Like it can be hard, and there is always a risk. Do I continue to be a function in the system, and I try to grow myself, even if there is a ceiling that blocks like the growing, because either like I'm too young, or there is so many parameters that will create this ceiling, or I take the risk to kickstart my own journey. But I think like in general, like for mental health, it's very important to do the choice that you did, probably.
Yeah, I mean it's always an interesting one. I mean, I probably operate quite well in those kinds of roles where I have uncertainty around me.
Yeah.
I kind of thrive in uncertainty in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But when you move into your own kind of businesses, especially if you don't have a partner, it can become quite isolating as well, right? So you don't really have many feedback mechanisms outside of I succeed or I fail.
Okay, yeah.
So
that makes sense.
To a certain degree, you don't have the support that you would in other organizations.
Yeah.
For me, that's great. I don't mind that, but I also sometimes go out and seek feedback, right? Like for me, it's the market tells me whether I'm doing a good job or not. We change, we pivot, and then we all of a sudden don't have any work, and it's like, maybe that wasn't the right decision.
Yeah.
You pivot the other way, and all of a sudden you have loads of work, and it's like, okay, we need to continue repeating this step.
Yeah.
Where if you're in a corporate environment, you have layers of people giving you feedback all the time. Sometimes not effective feedback or effectively, but you have the safety net that you sometimes don't have when you're out on your own.
Well, I guess the benefit of doing what you do is that you can test and fast and
Correct.
fail fast, and so iterate on it.
And that's very much our ethos as well, right? So it's when you look at things like lean startup and those methodologies, and even human-centered design, it's all about test and fail.
Okay.
And test and fail as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
So you can iterate. So it's not like, don't wait for the thing to be perfect, wait for it to be good enough.
Yeah.
And then get it out to market and iterate on the feedback.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you started like the Arcturious right after COVID.
In the middle.
Yeah. So how it is like to register like as a partner, like from like 0 to 0.5, like the very first step of becoming a Salesforce partner. What it is and how does that feel, I think?
Yeah, I think again, your experiences, people's experience will be quite sometimes but different to mine in that respect, because I already had very in-depth knowledge of Salesforce and the partner program and the network. So when I kind of made that call, it was actually quite easy for me to kind of get started, right? I was like, I already have a customer.
Yeah.
I already have certifications.
Yeah.
I've already started bringing people onto the books. So, we didn't start from nothing per se. So it was, relatively quick, but also relatively slow, but slow intentionally.
Okay.
So for my first year, after, PwC and moving into Arcturious, I intentionally was like, okay, I need to kind of ramp up nice and slowly.
Yeah.
Partly for my own mental health and to also to give us that opportunity to test the market. I'd look at other companies that started about the same time as ours, and they 4 or 5 times bigger, different strategy, but that just doesn't mean we didn't do well.
Okay,
it just means that we chose a different path, right? So we scaled slower. We're now at that point we want to start turning the handles and ramping it up a bit. But we were given that opportunity because we we really built a name for ourselves in the market. So we're punching way above our weight in a lot of ways, right? So, 2 partner innovation awards globally at Dreamforce. Having our logo up there with the big guys in the industry.
That must be great.
Having customers on stage almost every year since our inception. So we've had 2 or 3 customers on stage at World Tour. I had the pleasure of talking on stage this year at World Tour and Dreamforce last year. We also had 2 clients on stage. So
it's good.
Massive for an organization as small as ours.
And so how did you surround yourself first when you started? And like, how do you manage like budget basically? Like, cause that's an interesting question. Like, how do you think basically? What's the thinking behind that?
I guess interestingly, a lot of the way that the people I brought on in the beginning, I actually brought on people that I could train. So we've worked with organizations like Generation Australia as an example.
I remember them. Are they still here?
I think so.
Generation.
I think so. So they would then kind of retrain people who were maybe struggling to find work or mothers who had been out of the employment for a long time. So we started bringing people like that on, partly because they have experience in other areas of life, and they're passionate about learning the tech itself, right? So some of my best guys have kind of come through those kinds of routes where they were very low on the Salesforce ecosystem, but I was able to kind of train and mentor them to build up those skills. Now we're in a different mode of growing, so we're starting to hire
like
people that can make me redundant is basically the role now, right? So as a founder, in a lot of ways you end up in every part of the business all the time. So one day I'm an architect, that afternoon I'm doing a sales call, then I'm doing some HR stuff, then I'm doing some marketing stuff.
How do you call that? Exciting to stimulating. I think that's the word.
It can be. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes, you get to a point where you really need to work on the business itself, and make sure that you start to surround yourself with people who can take stuff away from you. And then the biggest challenge is in trust, right? Because a lot of founders, you have your particular way of doing things and certainly outcomes that you want to achieve. And to start to release that to other people can also be quite a journey in itself.
I think I heard someone explaining that basically it's all about like outsourcing like the stress level. I think like we think often about like outsourcing like the task as a skill, but there is also the stress level that is a big component of what makes someone like good to work with.
Absolutely.
And I think like to come back to the point that so upskilling like people that were working somewhere else before, I think like Salesforce is extremely good at making it attractive to upskill and to kickstart from 0 to 1 in the Salesforce ecosystem. And I don't think it's all the technology platforms that are doing that well to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely in some ways a very low barrier to entry with Salesforce when it comes to picking up the skills. And you got Trailhead and you have a fairly big ecosystem of people who are very willing to give their time as well, right? So that in itself is a really big help. So to be on the other side of it and be able to give people an opportunity to completely change their life. Whether it's somebody who has been out of the workforce for 10 years because she's been looking after her children. Or an accountant who is bored of accounting, wants to get into something new. Or one of my team kind of came from the hospitality industry as well, and during COVID obviously that was hit quite hard. And we gave them the opportunity to build those skills and move into a whole new world, right? So it's an exciting place to be, and it's very rewarding on the other side of it.
That must be amazing. I was wondering, do you have like an anecdote of someone that took it like super quickly well, and like where they're from or like something. Yeah.
Yeah, one of our team members, when he had just finished uni, he was actually not doing what he was passionate about.
Oh, yeah.
So at the time, he was kind of working in warehouses for the likes of Cotton On, and through mutual connections, got introduced to me.
Yeah.
So essentially, offered him an unpaid internship for a month or so.
Yeah.
To just give him an opportunity to see what we do and how we do it. And fast forward 3 or 4 years, and he's on an architect track.
Oh, really?
He's taken it on so well. Really excelled in the tech, really starting to understand the customer problem.
Yeah.
At the time when he first was kind of trialing it out with me, his family was not all that encouraging, because they were like, well, one, you're not doing something that you're
study related
to.
Yeah.
And two, you're not getting paid to do it. But in taking that leap with me, and again, mutual trust both sides. He's been able to work on elements of Salesforce that not everybody gets the opportunity to. So all the difficult stuff, CPQ and billing and field service,
customer good.
Consumer goods cloud. Yeah, exactly. So, getting your hands into all these parts of Salesforce that, sometimes when you're in a large consulting firm, you might only ever do Sales Cloud. And I think that, sometimes restricts your growth on the platform, because you don't really get to see what it's about. So yeah, that's probably one of our most amazing examples. And he's now, the pillar of a lot of our business. So, bit of a legend in himself, but good opportunity.
And do you feel like, as yourself, since the time you kickstart your Salesforce journey to now, like your knowledge must have changed in a way, because like could you explain how your vision and your knowledge within Salesforce evolve, like between all those years? Because I guess it's totally different.
Yeah, I mean, when I had my very first introduction to Salesforce, obviously it was really in the early days, so good old Salesforce Classic, and even then, even then it was an exceptional system, right? So going from systems where I had to write SQL code to pull a report to being able to like click and drag items onto a report, already that was amazing, right? So fast forward 16 odd years, and the platform's developed enormously. I mean, the acquisitions that they've made, Velocity is probably a good example, where now we have all these really great industry clouds, the field service kind of solutions and all that kind of stuff. So it's just really broadened our horizons. So where, in the beginning it was like Salesforce is a sales and opportunity management system. And now it's more of a BPM, right? So it's more about managing business process end to end.
Is it like how, like, because I just give you an example from my side, when like friends ask me what is Salesforce, I still introduce Salesforce as a CRM. Because like I guess it's the easiest way to explain it. How do you describe like Salesforce to your friends? Do you describe it like as a CRM first or as an overall platform?
I talk about it as our canvas. So to a certain degree, it's a blank page, right? And the number of problems that we can solve on it, yes, they revolve around CRM concepts like stakeholder management. But the types of problems we've solved, if you look at something like child story out of fax, like we're actually managing super sensitive processes about super sensitive people in the most fragile time of their lives, right? Where, in other government systems, tracking lobbyists and all that kind of stuff, which is not a typical CRM function. And then all the way to, sales and service and portals and integration and automation, all this kind of stuff. So for me, it's more about seamlessly managing business processes end to end, opposed to, hey, I've got a CRM that does some sales stuff. And that's the key to me. And that's probably the biggest shift in the platform, right? And we look at AgentForce World Tour last week. One, there was hardly any Salesforce branding on it. It was AgentForce, right? So that in itself is kind of talking about a bit of a shift, not necessarily just towards AI, but focusing on the fact that the platform is not just a sales platform. It's so much more than that. And it's, a really interesting shift in how our customers engage their customers. And in some ways engage their customer of the customer.
Like the impact.
Exactly. The impact and the way that you distribute through marketing channels, and the way that you communicate through service channels, and the way that systems interact with each other. So that's really, in a nutshell, Salesforce as a business process management opposed to just a CRM is where I see it.
And have you had a chance to implement like a Salesforce AgentForce project? And what do you think about the platform?
Yeah, we've done a couple now. We were lucky enough to be in that kind of first round. Overall, I think, really interesting set of tools. Amazing potential in terms of the fact that we can now start to trigger actions. And I think moving from that kind of knowledge centered kind of agent chatbot kind of scenario to, this personality that you create, right? So back in the day with chatbots, it was decision trees, knowledge trees to go, like, if you ask this question, then this is the answer. Now with AgentForce, we're creating, again, like these personalities, right? So we create a bot called Ava, and Ava's job is to go and understand our massive product database of 30,000 SKUs. To go and retrieve that information in itself is impressive. But to retrieve that information when I can ask the question in 20 different ways, and you understand my context, I think that's where the game changer is. And then I understand. Again, that shift of going, okay, Ava, now that you understand my products, I now want you to be able to take actions like create orders or modify them, or go and look up what stock we have across our different warehouses, and then putting those guardrails in to say, actually, I don't want you to tell my customer that I have 1,000 units of this thing. Because I have 10,000 customers, and every one of those customers want 500 units. So I might not want to tell one customer that I can fulfill their whole order.
Like the instruction.
Correct. And that kind of scope and guidance to say, just tell the customer we have stock or we don't have stock. Don't tell them how much stock we have.
Like the deep level of... that's interesting.
So, sometimes I think the challenge with agents, and this comes back to what we were talking about, like lean design and those kinds of processes, right? You need to start small, test often, and then extend the use case. Because it's like teaching a child. Like you go answer questions and it might go completely off the rails, and you could ask it questions about astrology and it'll go give you some answers. But that's not our business. So we then want to kind of start to refine the way that we are training the agent itself to go, okay, well, actually your job is not just to answer questions, it's about answering questions about our products. And here is where you find information on our products, right? So you then start to put those guardrails and guidance together.
I think it's very interesting. Like, because I had the chance to test it as well, and I think it's very interesting the fact that you can trigger action, and in fact that it's a bit like if we are coding without text, like natural language in a way, because like we give instruction, and I think it's a new step. Like,
it is. I think there's, with all this stuff, there's all the little elements of hidden complexity as well, right? So the way that we see it in market is you give it some instructions and you've already pre-built everything else, right? So you're already established on the platform. Therefore, you have integration with MuleSoft and lots of flows that the agent can just tap into. For a lot of clients, that's not the reality.
Why?
Because they're more immature on the platform.
That makes sense.
We're not just all of a sudden typing some words into a prompt builder to make this thing happen. We then actually have to give it the actions. So
like the flow are dedicated to the agents, in my view.
So we need to create the flows. We need to create the integration. We need to, in some cases, write a bit of Apex to go and let the agent tap into the ability and the data, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where the work ends up coming from. And then up front, again, it's really trying to help build a personality. Like that's the way that I'm kind of looking at it at the moment.
And I think what I'm very excited about is when we start to have like a new way of interacting with the agent. Like voice will be like a game changer, I think. Like I'm very excited for the future to make a call to a support service and speaking with an agent that is able to do action directly through Salesforce. I think the wow effect, like even when I watch Salesforce demo or like keynote, like there is often the phone that someone pick up and speaking with the agent. This I'm very excited about that. Do you think what's the time frame for this to be available?
I mean, safe harbor is always a thing with Salesforce, so that's always a challenging question. Some of it's available today, right? So the immediate voice conversation is being used by some clients in the States and other parts of the world already. I think the extension of that, I mean, hopefully this year, probably next year. But in saying that, what actually really excites me is not the pure voice channel, it's the multimodal kind of comms. So the fact that we can have a conversation across 3 streams, like I can, as a customer, and again, there's 2 lenses here, right? The customer lens is I can make a phone call, it can then send me a message as we saw in the demo. And then I can go take a picture and I'm still on the call and it's still in one conversation. It's not like I'm having another conversation with another bot over here. It's the same bot in the same conversation.
So omni-channel?
So I guess omni-channel is probably one way of referring to it. Multimodal kind of is another way of thinking about it, in that I'm having the same conversation across different platforms at the same time. Opposed to omni-channel, where you can contact me through all these platforms. But they're necessarily independent conversations, right? But then there's the other side, which we haven't really seen in a massive way, except for maybe with the sales coach conversation, is being able to have that voice interaction with my agent as an employee. Because often it's easier to describe what I'm trying to do, right? Like I need to find a report with this segment of customers on this segment of products. Help me do that, and then actually start to then interact with that report, but still have the agent engaging with you through that conversation, right? So that's the stuff that I'm looking forward to seeing. But also like that power of, hey, if we're in retail, yes, we have a customer facing agent, Judy or Mandy or whatever you want to call it. And that agent is now engaging with my customer and, you know, being a personal shopper as an example, right? But in the back end, my marketing manager wants a personalized AI assistant to help find, you know, what products are we running, right? Or tell me, you know, I'm in a FMGC or even a cosmetics company and my product has a shelf life. So tell me how many batches of which products are going to go off in the next 3 months. Because I'm going to run a campaign on that.
So it's that must be interesting. It's like querying the agent and receiving like proper advice.
Exactly. And that's where channels like Slack become really interesting, right? Because you have this like realm of agents, and I think that's also a challenge for our customers, because when we see AgentForce demoed in action, we're not talking about a single agent.
A team of
agents, and they all have very specialist skills. And it's like onboarding a person into a new role. Like, what is your role? What's the description of that role? What should you be doing? What shouldn't you be doing?
That's very interesting.
And what actions are you supposed to be taking in your role as a finance manager or a salesperson, right?
I think like within Salesforce right now, like we are being introduced to agents in a way because it's a pretty recent technology. But I think 1 to 2 years, what we will see is like teams.
Yes.
So being able to have like a different layer of responsibilities, such as like an individual contributor agent, the manager, and like maybe key role that are able to supervise teams of agents. Do you think that will be the case?
Yeah, I think there'll be a version of that. Like again, with very specialized instructions. So you and permissions, right? So security is and trust is one of the most core pillars here. So if I'm in a leadership role, I want my agent to be able to go and look at all my sales across all my sales teams and start to educate me on what is a top performer and what isn't. When I'm an individual in that role, I want the agent to give me lessons learned and raise up information to me almost proactively when I'm engaging with customers and records, which is kind of what we're seeing with stuff like Sales Coach, right?
Okay, I haven't explored Sales Coach much. Is it good? Like, were you impressed by the and like maybe like what does it do exactly?
So there's kind of two parts to it. One is essentially like we all have note takers on our calls these days. So essentially you're on a call, Einstein or your AgentForce agent sits on the call with you, listens to what's being said, and then is offering you up tips and tricks. So I might say, hey, say this, or hey, they've just mentioned this competitor, ask this question. Or
like product recommendations
and sales tactics.
Okay, that's very good.
And then giving you feedback after the call to say, you were a bit light in this area, you could improve here.
Is it integrated through AirCall, or like how does that work?
So that I don't know for sure. I don't know if like AirCall as an example, but I know through the video messaging kind of conversations it is. So, but it would make sense if it was also able to dial into or listen to another system. But I don't know what V1 is, if it's just on like Google Meets and Teams and all that kind of stuff. The other side of it though is also actually being able to do role play. So the AgentForce agent acts as a customer. And then you have a conversation, you try and sell it, your product, right? And then it kind of gives you feedback.
And that must be interesting if there is a nice way to gamify like the interaction. I guess it's a nice way to onboard like new like sales rep or
and because it's ultimately I think sometimes when you're doing role play with another human, it can be quite intimidating because like, oh, this person's judging me, right? Where if you're doing role play with an AI agent,
it's more like
you can be a little bit more natural because you don't have that same kind of inherent pressure as you get when you're dealing with an individual.
That makes sense. And so at this stage, Arcturious like is focused on what kind of cloud, like and also are you using external technology platform? I'm just thinking like for example, other partners sometimes they will implement like other technology. What's your vision on the tech stack?
So at the moment it's very broad Salesforce play. So what I call the ticket to play stuff, obviously sales, service, experience cloud is are things that everybody should be able to do. We are doing a little bit more with the likes of Site Tracker as an example, for asset management and capital projects. So building a cell phone tower, right? We do a bit of work in the travel space now, as well. Again, another partner that we're working with there, Captio, is a really good example of ISV or OEM type solutions built on the platform. That open up some interesting opportunities in market for us, and then we can extend that with things like AgentForce, right? There's some really cool stuff happening there. Back in the Salesforce platform, things like Commerce Cloud, Consumer Goods Cloud, Energy and Utilities Cloud are focuses for us. And then a big one for us at the moment is also field service. So we do a lot of field service implementations.
What kind of company is it like that implement field service?
Yeah, so a good example of ours and customer that we've spoken about a little bit in the past is Tomra. So they essentially help run container deposit schemes. So you have a big reverse vending machine. You put your bottle in the machine, and then you get essentially a rebate from the machine. So
I understand.
in their scenario, running the field service operation in the back end, making sure the technicians get to site when they need to be on site, and one-time fixed kind of rate, getting that really high. Other customers, whether it's waste collection or maintaining council sites or whatever the case may be. So any of those types of operations. And then if you can go broader into health and insurance, and anywhere where I need to schedule an appointment with a field-based team.
Could it be a real estate, for example?
Real estate could work as well. There are other tools on the platform that would also help you do that, like Salesforce Maps as an example, depending on what we're trying to do. So in a real estate scenario, I'd probably say more like property maintenance. So making sure you get an electrician on site, or a plumber, or a whatever, opposed to managing inspections.
That makes sense. And so you do you think, like, in the future, like, what will be the goal for Arcturious? Would you like to continue to expand on Salesforce technology, or what have you planned? Like, so for example, like some some will create like some ISV platform. Like, what would be your dream, like, in the next 5 years?
I mean, taking some of our IP to market is always an exciting potential opportunity. So we've built some stuff in inventory management and loyalty management and those kinds of areas that at some stage might be great to take to market as products.
Such as like components, or like
a bit of components, but then also the data model and the process that sits behind it. So there's opportunities like that. For the time being, sticking on the consulting and managed services side and advisory, I think is a really good place for us. And then, in terms of other pieces of technology, because we tend to lean to more complex solutions overall, working more closely with ERPs as an example would be an interesting part.
So like NetSuite, for example?
Like a NetSuite and Xero, and accounting systems as well.
I feel like Xero is like, it's in Australia at least, it's like a mainstream platform user.
It's very, very much everywhere.
Do you use it as well as to run your own business?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so ERP, how about like a solution like SAP, like SAP? Is it part of it as well?
I mean, that's probably more, we would need to build a very dedicated team to start to look at something like SAP, because it's just such a big beast.
Like as big as Salesforce, basically.
Exactly. But I mean, who knows? No immediate plans to go too far down that route. At the moment, it's probably looking at things that are more have more synergies with what our customers are doing. Right. So in the retail and consumer goods space, you might find a bit of NetSuite, or you might find other similar sets of kind of technology. When you move into TowerCo or Telco or whatever, you might then find that actually there's a lot of clients that are using what's the word I'm looking for? Like vHive, so the digital infrastructure type stuff, right? So being able to have a digital twin.
I understand.
And potentially working with integrating those sets of technologies.
There is a cloud specific to telco, no? It's communications.
That's again more around the telco to the customer side. The towercos that we're working with are almost more like property companies in a way, right? So they will go and lease a piece of land. They'll build a cell phone tower on it, and then they'll lease the top of the tower out to the telco. So that very interesting, kind of more heavy on asset management than necessarily the customer layer.
So like this would be like your like expansion in like 5 years, and you as a personal dream, what you would like to do. For example, like would you like to go back to hospitality one day? Like do you have like dream that are like a bit outside of
Outside the box,
Salesforce?
yeah. I mean, hell, I'd love to have a cabana on a beach somewhere and run a scuba diving school. That's always a good retirement plan.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think spending a bit more time in nature is always a
a
good
good
one for me.
thing. Yeah,
So yeah, we I think haven't really thought of it much further than
yeah,
that. I mean, there's always that little inkling. It's like, oh, I'd love to own a bar or a restaurant or something,
yeah.
or go and get a piece of land out somewhere and build an awesome retreat or
Yeah,
something. So who knows?
yeah, maybe
Maybe.
in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, thank you. It was really good to exchange with you and to learn about Arcturious and your journey.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Been great.